In this video, I'm going to talk about quick ways to identify, to identify chords. So this is one of those things that you can think about in multiple ways. So let me pull out just a random chord here. I'm going to put us in the key of G major, which everybody all together, what is the key signature for G major? Hopefully you said 1 sharp. And I'm going to write out this chord in SATB form. Remember, SATB form means chorale form, where we have one voice in each of the soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. So there are a lot of different ways to help you quickly identify what chord this is. If you would like, you can think about the chord as an isolated entity, meaning that I'm going to try to figure out what the root is, what the inversion is, not relating to the key of G major. This is not the method that I recommend, especially when you're performing analysis, because you're forced to have an extra step when you start to apply a Roman numeral. But let's try it just in case it's one of those things that works for you. So one of the first things that I want to do, if you are having a hard time doing this in your mind, then by all means do it on paper to start. I'm going to collapse this entire chord so that it fits within 1 octave comfortably. So I'm going to take my bottommost note, which is a C. Notice that my tenor is also a C, and I do not have to write down the note 2 times. Then I have an A in my alto, and I have an E in my soprano. So to make that fit super duper comfortably so that it's stacked in thirds, I'm going to remember that my C is on the bottom here, but I'm going to stick it up in between these pitches so that it fits comfortably within an octave. Notice that from this C down, up, down, up, down, up, down. I need more coffee. From this C to this E is more than an octave, and it's easier for us to see the qualities of chords if we stack them in thirds within an octave. So again, I'm gonna remember that C is my bottom note, but the notes of this chord are A, C, and E. Now again, if you want to think about this as an isolated entity, one of the quick ways to identify the quality of this chord is to think about the key of the root. So you may already come to the immediate conclusion that ACE is the tonic triad for something. It is the tonic triad for an A minor scale. We already know that 1 in A minor is going to be of A minor quality, and that's as far as I have to think. If you are the kind of person who likes to count intervals, you can think of A to C as a minor third, C to E as a major third. And when you have a minor third with a major third stacked on top, this automatically gives us a minor triad. Now, I don't recommend either one of those methods. And here's why. When we're performing an analysis, we have to think, as we are writing down the different types of Roman numerals, all how they relate back to the key that we are analyzing in. Now, if we're in something that's modulating or something that has different keys, remember to relate it back to whatever key you have determined fits this section. So say this was a piece that started in C major and we've modulated to its dominant in G major. I still want to relate everything back in my Roman numeral analysis to whatever key I'm in at the time. So when I'm thinking about how I'm going to relate a Roman numeral to this key, I am thinking about the triads that exist in this key. So the first thing I do is I write out that scale, and I write out the triads that are built on every single scale degree. Now, naturally, the one that is built on scale degree 8, quote unquote, is the same one built on scale degree 1. So really, I don't need to have that in there 2 times. But when you are in a major key, each one of these different triads that are built on these different scale degrees are always going to be of the same quality. The triad built on scale degree 1 is always major. Triad built on scale degree 2 is always minor. Scale degree 3, always minor. Scale degree 4 always major, 5 always major, 6 always minor, 7 always a diminished triad. So if we are ever discussing how something is native within a key and we're talking about a triad, this will always and forever be true. This is another way that you can apply thinking about triads. So if I'm in the key of G and I see these pitches, A, C, and E, I'm automatically thinking this is a triad built on scale degree 2 in a major key. And no matter what, as long as there are no accidentals, as long as nothing has changed the notes of the G scale, That is always going to be of a minor quality. So that way I don't have to go through, figure out, okay, well, what is the quality of this triad, blah, blah, whatever. I don't want to take that kind of time. If I remember, or if I have as a little cheat sheet in my homework until I can easily remember this information, then no matter what key I'm in, let's get rid of this and do it in a super duper nasty key. Remember that in a major scale, 1, always major, 2, always minor, 3, always minor, 4, always major, 5, always major, 6, always minor, 7, always diminished. Remember, these are triads only. 7th chords are a different story, and I'll get to that in another video. So say I am in this key. Take a moment and figure out what this key is. Don't forget the quick trick. When you are in a flat key, this works for every single flat key except for F. F, you kind of just need to remember, has 1 flat, and that flat is a B flat. To figure out very quickly what key we're in, if you have a bunch of flats, you look at the second to last flat in the list of flats as they appear at the beginning of the key signature, or the beginning of the piece, which is where the key signature is. I really need more coffee. And that is always what key we're in. So this is in the key of D flat. So if I'm in this key and I see this chord, I don't want to think about this as it relates to all these flats. I don't want to figure out intervals. I don't want to go through and do all that. That's going to give me a headache. So first thing I'm going to do again is collect these pitches and put them comfortably within an octave. I'm bringing my B flat up here. Next thing I have is a G flat. Then we have a D flat. I'm going to put that right here. And we have a G flat again. I don't have to think about that. Now, this is comfortably sitting within an octave, but it's not in root position. So I'm going to remember that the B flat is the one on the bottom, and I'm going to stack these in thirds so they are easier for me to see. And I can see that I have a G flat, B flat, and D flat in this chord. And again, I don't want to go through and think about all the distances between these. It's important to be able to do that, to be able to go through that cognitive process, but we're in a hurry. And so we want to figure out immediately what this triad is without having to go through all those different steps. If I'm going through and performing an analysis for homework, I don't want to spend 3.5 hours on it. So in the key of D flat major, I'm going to think about my scale degrees. G flat. Okay. I found the one that has the root of G flat. That is on scale degree 4 in a major key, which makes this automatically a major triad. The same trick works in a minor key, except in a minor key, we have a different set of Roman numerals that are never going to change. So just like in a major key, 1 is always major, 2 is always minor, blah, 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 blah. In a minor key, 1 is always minor, 2 is always diminished. This is one of our differences here. 3, I swear to God, I have a doctorate in this. 3 is always major. 4 is always minor. 5 is always going to be major, but I'm going to talk about that one in a second. 6 is always major. And 7 is still always going to be diminished before we come back to 1. Minor is a little bit more of a pain in the butt because of why this continues to be major. So let's take everybody's favorite minor scale in A minor. Now this particular version of A minor, as you already know, is A natural minor. Now, one thing it's important to realize is A natural minor is a mode, not a scale. Depending on who you talk to, they may argue with me on that, but this is the way I like to think of it, so I know the difference between what I have to do when I am analyzing in this key. Something that is in a mode is a different grouping of what we call pitch collections, a bunch of pitches that are working together. And in the time period that we are studying, we're not looking at those yet. We are only looking at scales, and scales operate based on tonal rules, which means we have leading tones, we have tendency tones that are going to behave a certain way. So anytime you are analyzing in a minor key, get it? We have to raise the leading tone. So in this particular case, the thing that makes 5 always major is that when I build something on scale degree 5, E, G sharp, and B, the accidental is what makes it major. But that accidental is always going to have to be there. Always, 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 always in the century we're studying right now. We're not going to have instances, almost always, I hate saying always just because there's going to be some crazy composer out there that's going to violate this rule, that this particular alteration is made in our harmonic context when we're looking at the harmony. The thing that's a little tricksy about a minor key is you have to remember that this is what you're typically going to see, and it's typically there because of this accidental. So let's go through and look at all of these triads built on different members of the minor scale. Now, in this particular case, it's a particular kind of minor, which we already know is harmonic minor, which means that on the way up and on the way down, no matter what, scale degree 7 has been raised. So when we are talking about the harmonic minor scale, when we're talking about analyzing in minor, we are talking about this, and it has to include that raised leading tone. My triad built on scale degree 1 is A, C, E. No alterations there, including the G sharp, so I don't have to worry about it. For scale degree 2, what's native in the key is a B, D, and F. You may remember, if you're thinking in the key of C major, this is the exact same pitches as scale degree 7's triad in C major. Hint, hint, they're closely related keys. Obviously, they're very closely related. They're not parallels, relatives. Yeah, that thing. And so I already know from working with C major that that quality is going to be diminished. The one that is built on scale degree 3, again, if we're thinking of relationships, C, E, and G is our absolute favorite triad of all, because C, E, and G is major with the easiest possible combinations and our favorite absolute key. But in this scale, it's built on scale degree 3, but it is major. So when we go to D, F, and A, that 4 is minor. Now here's where things get irritating. E, G sharp, and B, because we are always going to be raising that leading tone when scale degree 5's triad is being used. So this is the first one that is going to include our raised leading tone. Now, I draw your attention back to something that you may have had your eyebrows raised. Notice that there is a G in scale degree 3, but in this instance, I'm not raising it. Why is that? Because when this triad was used, it was almost never, again I say almost very hesitantly because there's going to be some crazy composer, if we are analyzing something as functioning as a scale degree 3 in a harmonic minor key, there would be no harmonic reason to raise that leading tone. It's not functioning as a leading tone here, because in this particular triad is going to be used in different parts of the harmony in which the leading tone will not be helpful to propel harmonic motion forward. If it's being used here, it's being used as a tendency tone. The purpose of a dominant chord is to push us in some way back to a tonic. That's how it behaves the most typically, the most obviously. That's its job. Therefore, what is the job of a 3 chord? The job of a 3 chord is to kind of act like a tonic harmony. And if I were to raise this, all of a sudden this becomes an augmented triad. And what harmonic purpose would that serve in traditional diatonic harmony? It simply wouldn't. It doesn't help me. Therefore, you're not going to find 3 in a minor key with that leading tone included. That's usually not going to be the case. So let's go on to scale degree 6. F, A, and C. And then our scale degree 7 is diminished again because we have to include that raised leading tone. This is the thing when we're writing in minor that can make things a little bit more tricksy. Notice a pattern here. If I'm comparing this to the major counterparts, they tend to be almost a reverse of each other. So in a minor key, one is going to be minor. In a major key, one is going to be major. That's a surprise to no one. These are kind of sort of related, but one is minor, one is diminished. No, there's no case in which 2 natively in the key, wink, wink, you've already talked about Neapolitan chords. There's no case in which 2 is going to be major when it's native to the key, when no alterations have been made. In the 3 chord, they literally flip-flop. In major, it's of minor quality. In minor, it's of major quality. If that's a tongue twister, try saying it 5 times fast. Same thing 4 flip-flops. 5 is never of a minor quality in traditional diatonic harmony where it's functioning as dominant sonority. We've already seen instances of having a minor 5. Those are happening in particular situations and you need to treat them with care. Most of the time you're going to see 5 with a major quality. 6 flip-flops, and because we're raising a leading tone in a minor key, 7 stays exactly the same. So this is the way that I like to think of building triads. I like to think of them how they relate to whatever key we're in if we are analyzing, or if you don't have any kind of help for context as to what we are looking at. I relate it to the root of the triad. So let's look at this one. C sharp, E, G. Gosh, that's horrendous. There we go. So how am I going to quickly figure out the quality of this triad? I have no context. I have no idea what key I'm in. This is a isolated on its own example that's kind of just shoved out there for me to try to see. In this particular case, to be able to look at the pattern of intervals between these pitches is probably actually going to be the fastest way for me to think about how to find the right answer. From C sharp up to E sharp is a major third. if I take that and squish it downward and I collapse it a little bit by making that E sharp instead an E natural, I've made major third go down just by a little bit, and now it's a minor third. So I know that my bottom interval is a minor third. And now going from E to G, what kind of interval is that? All right, I'm thinking in E major, the third of E major is a G sharp. That would be a major third. However, my G is not a G sharp. It's a G natural. I've taken that big interval and I've collapsed it down by just a little bit. And whenever I do that, that major third becomes a minor third. So C sharp to E is a minor third. E to G is a minor third. If I put two minor thirds on top of each other, that is automatically a diminished triad. So going through this process in your head very, very quickly and doing it over and 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 over again is the way that it's going to come very, very fast to you. So let's look at another one. So if I am looking at this triad, I don't mind thinking about it as it relates to the bottom note. So basically I'm thinking as if for 1 second I am in the key of A major, because that is the root of this triad. The reason I didn't do that for C sharp E G, because does anybody want to think in the key of C sharp major? No, absolutely not. So I'm going to use a different trick to get an answer when I have a root that I really, really don't particularly care for. Sorry, C sharp. But I'm perfectly fine thinking of the key of A. I know that it has 3 sharps, fat cats go. And so I'm going to look at the other pitches in this triad. I'm going to say, okay, are any of these accidentals here? C sharp is present in this triad. In the key of A, the triad that is built on scale degree 1 is A, C sharp, E, bing, bang, boom. I know that this is an A major triad. So there are multiple ways that you can think about these to get the answer correct. That's the nice thing about learning music the way that we do. People who invented music invented math way, way back in the Middle Ages. So I would encourage you to try some of these if you find yourself struggling with analysis. In some of my other videos, we're going to practice applying these in an actual analysis with a real piece of repertoire. So please take a minute and look at those videos when you get a chance and when I get a chance to record them. And happy analyzing!